Make three more Christmas ornaments real quick to finish up an order that I've got for the Good News shop. I'll have 10 of them total once I'm done with these three. These three are the more difficult ones, so I was saving them for last. But I'm going to go try and deliver these today if at all possible. So as soon as I get the rest of my safety gear on, we're going to get started. Try and double up my dust mask here because I breathe so much of this stuff. Makes me feel a little healthier. I don't know. May not be. All right. Let's see here. Tell you one thing with wood turning, you definitely want to have a dust mask, especially if you're using old wood like I am. Tornado damaged wood from old buildings that probably had all kind of stuff in them you don't want to breathe in. But I'll tell you what, you get to turn a piece of history. It's not just about the Christmas ornament itself, but I mean, you get to actually use it. It's something that's going to remind you of that building every time you put it up. I'm going to have to get a new face shield. This is a little crazy. But anyway, all right, we're going to go ahead and get started as soon as I get this set up here, which I pretty well got it. This right here is going to be a little tricky. I've got a little chunk right here, and it's going to basically be invisible until I hit it. I've done that a lot with bowls, so it's not the end of the world or nothing. It's just a little weird. Make sure I'm plugged in. All right, I think we're ready to go. Y'all ready? I'm ready. Let's get it. Oh, wait. I got to turn this camera on. Just kidding. I'm almost ready. All right. Think we're good right now. There we go. Let's get it. That was in reverse. Let's try again. Turning interesting pieces like this because I've got a flat spot here, I've got a jagged spot here. I may hit these few spots with a torch real quick like we did on the ones before, so that way if I get to a shape that I really like, I don't have to mess it up trying to make that look good. So we're going to do that real quick now that I've got some big chunks gone and we got a little better looking piece here. Keep in mind, you always want to be careful when you're using a torch around your wood lathe because there's always dust, especially on mine. But we're just going to kind of burn it real quick. A little bigger torch, bigger flame here. It just helps to make it look a lot better. If you have to leave a spot, it reminds me of the older looking wood. As you can see, right here, that's where I burn it with the torch, and right here is the original, just age of the wood. So it looks similar, it ain't the same, but it does blend in a little better. And I found on the last couple of them that I've done, if you do it before you start turning, you can do away with everything that's not in these little areas. It's a lot easier to do. It is something you want to be real careful with, though, for real. I've got a lot of dust around here, and if that flame keeps going, or if it shoots off some embers or anything in the wrong direction, that could be a bad scenario. That's why I just do a little at a time, make sure the fire goes out. A little more. Because the more you heat it, the quicker it tries to burn. As you can see down here. I'll tell you what, it sure does make it look a lot better. I like the way it turns out, at least. Whether anybody else does or not. I'm the one making them, because I guess that's really the main thing that matters. Obviously, the people that are buying them, it's going to matter to them. But that's the thing. If you don't make things that you like, you're going to hate doing it. Same thing with, I make wedding videos and stuff. And the people hire you for the style that you have, not necessarily just for the video. They see your videos, the ones you've done in the past, and if they want that style, you're the only one that can do it, essentially. It was kind of hard to blow through two dust mounts. Sorry for all the chit chat. I know y'all really don't give a dang what I've got to say. Alright, I think that's pretty good. I can get up inside of there a little better. Alright, I think I like that. I've got all the flat spots. There's only one of those, and then I've got all these rough spots. So now when I go to turn this, I can get down inside of there a little better, maybe. But now that when I go to turn this, I won't have to worry about it having to come back and redo some of these spots. Tell you what, while we let that cool down, I'll show you a couple of them that I did that way. I'll show you the difference here. Alright, so this one right here is one that I did. And I used the, let me get the dust out so you can see a little better. This is one that I did earlier, the last time I turned, and I waited until afterwards to hit that with the torch. There was only one spot, but because the heat kept spreading, it charred the rest of this. And when I went to go sand it, it actually spread it around, so I've got a ring of black. As opposed to, let me show this camera too, I guess. As opposed to this one here that I used the torch beforehand, and then I went ahead and got all that off as I was cutting away, and the rest of it looks fine, but that looks like an older piece of wood. It doesn't necessarily just look burnt. It is burnt, but that's not the point. But anyway, so I got this one set up now. It's cooling down pretty good. I don't see any more embers or anything like that. So I think we're going to go ahead and start turning it. Y'all ready? I am. Let's get it. I'm working on unique pieces like this one because there's so many spots here that I had to burn, and because it's got all those rough spots. You do need to stop and look at it a little more often. Like this spot up here, I may come back with a torch and hit up here, or just turn it down. I'm not sure yet. It kind of depends. Because if I tear it, that may tear off. I don't know. Let's just roll with it and see what we can come up with, all right? All right. Something a little sharper. This is going to be a little hard to sand. If you haven't noticed, anytime I do anything up here, it wiggles the whole end here, which means there's too much weight on this end. It's too thin up here. Now this one looks pretty neat and I like it, but it's going to be a little more difficult to make nice for that reason. I've got spots in here that really need to have a torch to it, I think, but I don't. If I do that, it's not going to come out looking as good. So this is when you got to make choices. Let's see. If I could do it more exact with a torch, that would be great. I can try it. See what I come up with. Kind of be real careful. Everywhere, I'm getting everything but what I want, actually. So, we're just going to kind of roll with that. Mainly down here. It'll still come out looking nice. It's just not what I was hoping for. That's all right. Can't always get what you want, right? Beatles thing about that. They know. So something like this, you have a couple of different choices here. Just sand it really, really, really carefully. Very, very, very carefully, that is. Or you just roll with it. And I prefer to sand it personally. So we're going to be very, very, very careful with it. We're not going to spend a lot of time sanding it. You're going to knock off some rough edges and make it look all right. It's better to have a rough ornament than it is to just be short of the ornament. We're going to crank this down to like 1500. Should be done. All right, that's not terrible. We'll go with that. Alright, so let's see what that's looking like. That ain't bad. I'm gonna have to hit it a little more, otherwise all that black right down here is gonna stay there. It's kind of smoothing out because it's wobbling so much, which is good and bad. It's nice that it's smoothing out. It's not what I wanted, but you know, like I said, you can't always get what you want. So now what we're going to do is we're going to turn this up at a higher speed and very, very carefully varnish this with some wood that we've already used, we've already cut off here. You do got to be very careful because it is pretty dainty. But essentially, the heat generated from this helps to polish the wood. Alright, now I think what we're going to do is hit it again in reverse at a lower speed. And then we'll do finishing touches. That's a lot better. I like that a lot better. Some of these grains a little rough, but it ain't terrible. All right, so now what we're going to do is add some oil to it. What I generally like to do on these, I've tested a lot of different ways to do it, and the fastest and best looking way that I found is doing a coat of mineral oil and then coming back, getting all the excess off of it. And I normally varnish it again after I put this on. You do need to scrub it into these spots like this where I burn it. Make sure it gets in all the grains. And once I've done that, I'll come back with just regular paraffin wax that they use for canning. You can buy big blocks of it. And I like that the best. If I had some carnauba wax, it's a lot more expensive. It would be a stronger wax, but it is a lot more expensive. So, depending on your budget, depending on your time frame, will depend on what you want to do. Beeswax also works really well. And from time to time I'll use that, but I don't have a lot of that anymore either. It's easier to get a hold of the canning wax, the just regular old paraffin wax. Technically speaking, you can use candles. The problem is they have dyes in them, and so it's kind of like using crayons. You can use that, but it will change the color significantly, because I've tested that in the past as well. And don't get me wrong, if you're going for that effect, it looks good. But for these where you want the natural color of the wood, I don't like it then. Like I said, instead of using a paper towel like I usually do, like I was several videos ago, I started using the varnishing technique to get off the excess, because it'll help polish it, and you're not just having loose fibers of paper towel all over it. Also, if you do it with the wood chip, you don't have to worry about stopping the rain. You just go ahead and grab your block and start putting the wax on. Now we just melt it in. downside to some of this is you're getting wax into these little cracks and crevices. That's good to help preserve the wood. It doesn't look great if you can't get all that wax out of there. It doesn't look bad, but I mean, these flat spots, they're easy to mess with. You just kind of rub around on them a little bit here, get off any excess. But these spots right here that have little cracks in it, you kind of got to dig in there with your fingernail or something. If you have any. But overall, I think that looks pretty good. All right, now we've got to very, very carefully part this off because this here has been wobbling a lot because it's uneven. I've got a lot of wood here, and on the opposite side, it's missing a big chunk, so it's wobbling real bad. If it wobbles too much, it could break off. So we've got to be very, very careful with this. Otherwise, we're going to have a really ugly looking ornament. It's going to be awful hard to put back together. So we're going to do it very, very carefully. We're going to turn it down. Get our parting tool. Turn this down. Alright, now, very, very, very carefully here. Trying not to get hurt and obviously not mess up the ornament. Yep, like that. Woo! You push a little too hard and it'll hit another chunk of wood like it did right here. You'll see it jumped off and grabbed right there and went right to the metal. That could have been dangerous. Luckily, nobody got hurt. And the ornament come out looking good. As long as nobody's hurting, that's all that really matters. But if your project comes out looking good and nobody got hurt doing something dumb like that, it's a win-win. All right. And then I normally just put a little oil right on the top there. And here's our Christmas ornament. See, it's got that flat spot that we burn in. Here's some of the original wear of the wood. And then down here where it was kind of broken off a bunch of different pieces, we kind of burnt that in to make it kind of look a little better instead of just having rough looking wood. Overall, I think that can come out pretty good. What do y'all think? I'm having to show it to both cameras, so you have to be patient with me here. All right. Stop that camera. Put this in. Right, we got two more blanks here that are kind of rough. Heck, I had a piece just fall off right then. You'll see it's real jaggedy on this end here. So what I try and do is I got it rounded off on one side and I kind of angle it to where I can get the most out of the tip to make it a little longer. Now I don't care about the middle, the meat of it here in the middle as much, because I can make that look pretty cool without a bunch of wood. But if you don't have enough to make it long enough, then it becomes more difficult to make look good. I've learned 8 inches is the prime for these blanks I like cutting. You can go a little longer if you want to, if you have enough wood for it, that is. But honestly, 8 inches is about the perfect length that I've come across. Now, where do I want this to be? Right here in the middle? That's probably the best idea, huh? I'd ask for y'all's opinion, but there ain't nobody here, so makes it a little difficult, huh? What we do right there. That'll hold on good there. I'll tighten this up. Now we're going to do the same thing we did just a minute ago. You'll see there's a big, oh, wait a minute, that may not work out good. It's going to be thin there, down to about here. That may be okay. I can make that real dainty all the way down. Or I could readjust it and have a little more in the center. What do you guys think? I normally turn that down pretty thin anyway. So I think we're going to leave it like this and hope for the best. That's what we're going to do. All right, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to get it we're going to get it remotely round. Get all this excess ghost wood off, essentially, is what I'm going to call it, because whenever you're turning, you can't actually see it. It just kind of, once you make contact with it, you know. You can barely see it. I'll take it back. You can barely see it. But I think we're going to go ahead and do that and then get the torch out and hit these rough spots that are left. All right, we will have to be careful with this in case chunks come flying off. So. Here we go. No. I'm sure you noticed the more I cut off, the less it was wobbling, which is what you're going for, obviously. I'm going to get that torch and hit up all these rough spots of wood here and there, all through. And that way, as I'm cutting, it'll cut away all the charred spots we don't want. And it'll leave a nice dark area on the spots we do want it to be. Alright, I think I like it pretty good. You want to put out any embers before you start turning it. You don't want to fling it on sawdust. That's not a good idea. Alright, let's go ahead and start turning it. What do y'all think? I'm going to go with it. Sound good. Let's do it. Here's where we can make it look really unique. I like this edge down here. I'm going to retighten this real quick. But I've done one before where I left the edge really ragged like this. I forget where, I've got it here somewhere. But it come out really neat looking. Now I'm losing all the stabilization down here, so I've got to be real careful. I may turn this a little more up here before I get crazy with it. That way I don't mess that up as I'm turning. Let me do that real quick. You know, that's the cool thing. We're working with old wood like this. I like the character left in the old wood like this. This is really cool to me. Now, if you have a new piece of wood, you're going to have to make sure everything looks perfect because there's no character in it. Unless it's fresh wood. It's got a lot of knots and everything like that. Everybody's got their own taste. heard it crack there. Alright, I think we're okay. A little weird for a second there. Okay. Let's go again. These kind right here, probably, these are normally my favorites. Because they just have a lot of character to them. There's cracks all through this, so I've got to be very, very careful as I'm doing this. It's funny, a lot of the people I watch on YouTube, for safety reasons, and I get it, anything that's got cracks and stuff in it, they normally don't use. But when you're like me and you ain't got a lot of wood to work with, you kind of got to make do with what you got. And a lot of times that means using wood that normally people may turn down. Like I said, this one here. This one probably would have ended up in somebody else's scrap pile, because it was not really big enough to make an ornament had I not left all this, all the cracks and stuff on. Unless it was just real short and fat. Like one of those little Christmas balls you put on, you can buy from the store. It's kind of boring though, to me. I like these cracks. I like showing off these cracks. You just got to be real careful with them. I don't know if you can see them, but they're down the whole thing here. You got to be real, real careful with them. You got to respect the wood and the lathe as you're working with it. That's for sure. If there's anything you can take away from this video, it's that. Don't do something crazy just because you think it'll look cool. But don't be afraid to try something new. Where this is coming apart down here at the bottom a lot. Like I can press on it and it actually comes apart. So I got to be very, very careful with it. So with this one, we may not put any wax on it. Now that we got us a coat of oil on it, I'm probably going to come back and do some wood butter, which has got, I'll probably just do that by hand real quick actually. That's beeswax mixed with mineral oil. That way it's got some oil, it's got some wax on it, just for protection. But yeah, if I go and try and do this with the paraffin wax, I'm going to have to put a lot of pressure on it to heat it up and melt it. And it may end up taking that bottom part apart. I got to be very careful with it. So sometimes you just got to kind of change up the finish on it to make sure it's safe and to keep your ornament intact. That's why it's always good to have more than one finish that you use. And you can just spray all these with the spray-on lacquer, or you can get some clear coat or whatever from the automotive department. You can kind of use whatever you feel like using in all reality. It may not come out as good as some store-bought finishes, but you can always try and experiment with things. Different oils work really good. You just got to be careful which ones because they can spoil. There's a lot of food-safe options. You just kind of got to know what to look for and stuff. I've done a lot of research into finishes, and I try and keep them all pretty basic and pretty food safe, so that way I can use them on all the different projects. I just like it better that way personally. Alright, now for this one, we're going to go ahead and call that done. The only problem I don't like with this particular finish, it will dull out, and it will also be oily. So once it soaks in, it won't be as bad, but it'll be oily up until that point. So I'm going to do a little more work to this one because of the way I ended up parting it off. I used an actual parting tool. Not a ton more work as long as you got sharp tools to work with. But it's a little extra work. That ain't too bad at all. I'm going to hit the edges with some 120. And go over it real quick with some 240. Alright, I like that already. Put some oil on the top. And there we have it. I like this part right here. I like trying to leave little spots like this. Like I said, if I'd have put that, the same, if I could talk, if I would have left that, if I would have tried on the same wax that I've been using, this part right here could have come apart. There's a crack going from here up through about half of this ornament here. And if you put too much pressure on it, it's going to come apart and then snap right off. And that would have ruined the look of this ornament to me. I'll show my other camera, and I think I've got one more ornament to make today, and that's it, I think. You got to give me a couple seconds on this one over here. I've got it on a fast motion speed. That way I can turn these into YouTube shorts with this other camera. That way I don't have to physically go through and speed up all the footage. Alright, got one more. Turn this one off. Get this one set up. One more ornament for the day. This one's a little funky. It's really wide and really long on some spots. I'm going to have to decide the best way to do this. It's also, I mean, it's pretty wide all around. Probably going to go something like this here. This sometimes is the hardest part, is getting it set up in a way that makes sense. Trying to use as much wood as possible. Another thing to keep in mind is what you're using right here. So I've got a 60-degree cone that I use most of the time. But because I don't have a lot of wood here, sometimes I have to rely on, there's an inner cone here on this one and then a little point. Sometimes I have to rely on that inner cone to actually hold the wood in place while I'm getting it turned down. And then I'll get away, and then I'll do away with that, obviously. But the main thing is you want to make sure that your chuck is good and tight to your lathe, and that your chuck is good and tight on your wood once you take that tailstock away. Alright, so this is going to be the same thing. We're going to kind of turn it until we get it mostly round. So I've got to turn it at a lower speed because this is very out of balance. I've got to do it at lower speeds for like bowls and stuff like that too. So I'm kind of used to that. It's not a big deal. The main thing is you want to get it pretty close to your wood. You'll find your widest point. Get it to where it's coming pretty close to your where you got your rest here. And yeah. Alright, so I think we're good to go. We're going to turn it probably like 1800 RPMs. And then we'll jump it up to 3,000, 3,500, something like that. Alright, let's get started. This is the last one for the day. sure you guys can tell just how rough that is. I've got a big flat spot right here, and it's a big radius on this side. Now, again, a lot of people wouldn't want to turn this way, but I like it personally because then it's going to leave all this flat spot right here that's got that older wood on it. I like that personally. That's just my opinion of, obviously. Everybody's got their own opinion on things. But I think it looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and get the torch and get all this in here. And I'm going to figure out exactly what I want to do with it before we go too much further. You'll notice the more you turn it, the less wobbly it gets. It's still wobbly, and the higher RPMs is going to make it worse. I doubt that's going to stay, but just in case it does. Don't really need a lot on this one, huh? All right. Now let's continue to turn this down. We'll kind of get an idea of what we're wanting to do here. But there is going to be one big flat spot on one side, no matter what we do. It's because of the way we did it. Do want to make sure all this is out. Turning the lathe on could put it out, and it could make it bigger. So you got to be real careful with that. Like I said, especially when you got all of this sawdust all around. change that up completely now. Whew. That's alright, not the end of the world. That's why you gotta stop and look at things sometimes. Alright. If I had it to do over, I might have done this a little differently. I have a lot more flat showing up than I anticipated. But I've got a little too much detail here, I feel like. But it's not bad. Not all of them are the best ones I've ever made, so. Okay, I did a little bit, but it's just flinging a bunch of sawdust because of the giant flat spots. It's a big, every time just bang, bang, it takes a big scoop out of it. That's all right. We'll hit it real quick with some sandpaper. Just to kind of smooth out the edges. Reverse it, do it again, and then varnish it again. Yeah, I got a little too complex on the bottom here. I'm not sure how I feel about that. But, you know what? It adds to it because this up here is fairly plain. So, you know, I don't know. It's alright. It is what it is, right? We're all going to go with a more simple finish on this one as well because of all the flat spots. Nothing wrong with that, though, because it's still going to look good. It's just going to not completely match the others is all. That's the thing about it, though. When you're making these things, every piece of wood is unique. And every one that you turn, none of them are going to be exactly the same. I learned that a long time ago. I tried to, when I first got a lathe, I tried to make things match. And I'll be honest with you, that's way harder. That is significantly harder than I would have ever thought it was going to be when I first started this. Even with an exact plan, things end up slightly different. Now, someone with a lot more experience than me on a lathe could probably make things match perfectly, but in my case, everything I do is vastly different than the last, especially these ornaments, because I kind of just make them up as I go, because each piece of wood is so very different than the last. But that's a good thing, because it keeps you on your toes. It makes you be creative. I know ain't really many people here watching this or listening to me, but I'm going to keep talking like you are. Because one of these days, there could be somebody there paying attention, actually taking notes. Doubtful. But one of these days, maybe. Hey, maybe it'll be my kids watching this one day trying to learn this stuff. And they'll come back and ask me questions about it. I don't know. All right. We'll go ahead and put some of this wood butter in here on top of that. The reason I do it in this order is so that way, once you put the wax on there, it kind of seals up the grain a little bit. Maybe not like super crazily, but it does seal up the grain some. So I try and get the oil in first. That way it'll seep into the grain deeper. Not like a lot deeper, but it does make a difference. Believe me, I've done this on many different ornaments, and I've tried different ways. And to me, this is the best one. When you're doing this, you always want to put your oil first to let it get deeper in there. So I do that with cutting boards as well whenever I make them. And yeah. It is kind of neat to be able to make these ornaments, and I'll tell you why. One, I'm making a piece of history. I'm taking a piece of history and making it a memory, you know what I mean? It'll be forever with somebody's tree. And that's pretty neat. But two, it gives me a chance to work with a bunch of different wood that I would normally not have access to. Unless I go cut down trees myself. So a lot of this wood's not cheap. This is just oak. So it's nothing special, but I've messed with some pretty neat woods doing these old buildings like this because they just cut down whatever was available to build these. Alright. Alright, I like that pretty good. I'm tempted to want to go ahead and varnish this one more time, but I didn't put a thick layer of that oil on there, or that wax on there, the wood butter, if I can talk right. So I think I'm just going to let it go like it is, and I'm going to go ahead and try and part this off. always got to be real careful when you do that, because this could always flip backwards. It could go flying off if you're not careful. So when you're doing a bigger piece, you want to do it at a slower speed, obviously. All right. I'll just hit this top part a little bit, real quick. And I'll throw a little bit of oil on top, and we'll be good to go on this one. All right, and that's the last one for the day right there. You guys see it? It's a big flat spot, but I like the character of it personally. And then the tip of it here, I had it coming down to a point, but the way it worked out, it didn't do as good as I was hoping, but it ain't bad. Not everything's perfect. Not everything's the coolest one. And hey, for all I know, somebody's going to think this is the coolest one. I don't know. Got a whole lot of dust on this camera. All right, guys. Well, that's all I've got for today. We've got it all done. Thank y'all for joining me, and y'all have a wonderful evening or afternoon.